Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Bill and Jaru Discuss Monsters. Still a work in progress title. Not sure this is going to be a main series, but because we want to talk about this game, we're doing it. So this is a work in progress title. Introducing Jaru.
Hey, I'm not dead. Woo!
Is that just going to be your intro now every time we do these?
Until I release a video on my own channel, I'm just gonna have to keep reassuring people that I'm not dead.
I just love the way you do like some sort of Terminator voice. I'm not dead. Dun 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 dun.
I'm still alive, bitch. But yeah, no. Or wait, what's the meme? I survived, bitch. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So, since in my channel, I've played, well, from the Resident Evil 3 remake, I've played the majority of the Resident Evil mainline games. So, I feel like since this marks the well, not end, but, temporal end to me playing Resident Evil on the channel for a while, let's talk about the latest introduction to the series, or not latest introduction, latest game. And
latest edition.
Edition, that was the word I was looking for. Like, it was on the tip of my tongue. My brain was like, oh shit, what was it again?
The latest introspection to the game.
Introspection. So this marks, no lie, the 24th game in the Resident Evil series.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and people said Final Fantasy and Call of Duty have too much. Now, granted, this isn't of the mainline games, unless you count Code Veronica being part of the mainline. This is including the spin-offs and stuff.
Yeah.
And I haven't played many of the spin-offs. Apparently the DS also has a few spin-offs on it, if you can believe that.
There's a shocking amount of bizarre spin-offs that were released for this franchise, just because it's so old at this point.
I mean, heck, it's been added to Dead by Daylight with Nemesis, Leon, Claire, Chris, and what was the other one's name? Jill. Yeah, how can I forget her? Yeah, as the main characters of that game, which is a bit funny because I really thought they were going to go with like the Tyrant from the second remake, but I guess Nemesis makes more sense since he's more iconic.
Yeah, I was hoping for someone else, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense, I suppose.
So, speaking of which, though, let's talk about Resident Evil Village, technically Resident Evil 8. And I'm just going to go out right at the bat and say this. This is probably my favourite game of all the 8 I've played. And I've played them all from the second and third remake to then going back to play the remastered of the first one, which is apparently a remaster, not a remake, 'cause it plays exactly the same as the original. It just looks prettier.
Yeah. Although it also has new, I think it has new voice acting too. So.
Oh, can you imagine if they kept the PS1 voice acting?
Oh my god, it's something else.
Yeah, and I've also played. I went back to play the original Resident Evil 4, then I played Resident Evil 5 in May, and I'm still a bit iffy about the game, and I've yet to finish Resident Evil 6. I don't know if I'll ever return to that game as a YouTube video. And then
Yeah.
to then Resident Evil 7 to now 8, and yeah, honestly, I feel like what this game does, it took everything I loved about the previous games, the inventory system, survival horror, the variation of monsters, but also combined it with the really fun action of Resident Evil 4 to Resident Evil 7's gameplay, which I guess we should talk about how this game starts off and its setting, which is what we were going to do anyway. So, Resident Evil Village obviously kind of takes some books in from Resident Evil 4, let's be real here. Well, not even just some, honestly, it feels like this entire game was just to test the waters out of what Resident Evil 4's remake is going to be.
Yeah, the setting of this European village with that castle looming overhead, and even like some of the more industrial sections of the village are all very reminiscent of RE4. And but I mean, to their credit, this one does feel more Romanian as opposed to the more Spanish feel of Resident Evil 4. So there are differences, but no doubt about it, this game definitely has more in common with RE4 in terms of setting than any other game.
Yeah, and I don't see that as a bad thing. You know, take what people loved about Resident Evil 4, modernize it, but maybe it's smart for this game to try out what they plan for Resident Evil 4, because I feel like they've always done that with each new Resident Evil. They're testing out things and seeing how it can be used in the next game in a sort of way. Resident Evil 1 tested out, exploration. Well, I don't even think they planned to do a sequel, but because it was such a hit on the PlayStation, that when they did a sequel, the sequel was kind of testing out for Nemesis, then Nemesis was kind of testing out for 4, and so on. And I have to admit, what this game...
Yeah, although there was such a... Sorry, yeah, you cut out for a second.
Oh, sorry.
Although
fine.
there is, admittedly, a fairly gargantuan gap between Resident Evil 3 and Resident Evil 4, both in terms of gameplay and time in general. So there was certainly a lot of development over the course of this franchise history.
Yeah, so to talk about the setting of Resident Evil 8, how it introduces you is nearly perfect. And the reason I say nearly perfect, because the opening to the game felt a bit too, not rushed, but just completely unfocused on, if you know what I mean. It didn't look like enough was written to set up the game, if you know what I mean. Like, Chris just randomly shoots Mia, spoilers, and then suddenly pushes a table aside, just goes, "Sorry, Ethan," bam, 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 shooting his wife, then taking his baby
to be
away.
honest, there's this, I think it's a trope called an idiot plot, which is where the plot can only happen if everyone's an idiot. And there's the whole game isn't like that, but the whole subplot of Chris keeping it a secret that Mia was secretly Miranda and all this stuff, like, that really is dumb. It doesn't make sense.
Spoilers.
Like, if I just shot Ethan's wife to death, I'd be like, "Don't worry, bro, that wasn't your wife, that was a monster." Like, what do you gain from not telling Ethan?
Do you know what would have actually probably saved that? If Chris was like, you wouldn't understand, we see Mia rise up behind him as oh damn, she's still alive. And then, she's the one that leaves with Rose. And then we're thinking like, hold on a minute, why is Chris trying to kill Mia, and why did Mia just take away Rose? I feel like that would have been a better setup. Or, one I just can't.
Yeah, it's very strange, because they later lampshade the whole situation in the Chris Redfield part of the game, where his team is, like, saying to Chris, "You should have told Ethan."
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I mean, if you're going to lampshade it this hard, why did you even make it a plot point? I don't know. That part's a little questionable, but other than that, it serves its purpose. It reintroduces you to the core characters, sets up Ethan's relationship with his daughter, and then drops you into Romania or wherever the hell the game's supposed to take place.
Yeah, it's never actually fully explained where exactly Ethan is, which I kind of like that, because it can lead to a lot of interpretation. But at the same time, just wondering where the hell I went with, like, one moment I'm in a very nice area, like, it looks like a nice little neighbouring area, then suddenly we're in the Arctic. It's like, how the hell did I end up here?
Yeah, it does feel a little, what's the term, contrived, like, but it does its job.
Yeah,
Resident Evil games aren't exactly known for their super tight writing.
Of course, but I do feel like, I know it sounds like we're sounding a bit negative. No, we are leading to the good part. Like, the setting for the village is great. Like, the amount, you could see all of the future areas you're going to go to in the distance the moment it loads you into it. The moment you go to the village, it's very empty, and you're only getting, like, clues to what could have happened. Like, it's not very clear that, zombies attacked, ate all the people. No, like, you can see markings on the walls, you see, like, walls smashed in, so you're kind of trying to piece together, like, what the hell happened here?
Yeah.
And I feel like each Resident Evil's always had a good first reveal monster in every single game, or at least the ones I've played.
Certainly. It's important to have, especially in Resident Evil, because they tend to insist on having each game have fairly different enemies. Like, sometimes they're progressions of previous enemies, but sometimes there's a good chunk of games where it's just a completely new enemy. Like, the molded of Part 7 are quite different from the werewolves of Part 8. So it's important to introduce the audience in an effective way to the new threat.
What's actually kind of interesting about how they did this differently, because each new enemy that was introduced, or the new first enemy, the cannon fodder, you know, they always given this very creepy, eerie, slow, like, as Sean puts it on screen, when you see the first ever zombie in Resident Evil 1, you just see your teammate struggling on the floor, and then you just see the zombie's head slowly turn as it growls at you. So,
Yeah.
and in this game, you're just getting pulled into the floor after you just saw an old man just get pulled up through the ceiling, and then you're looking at all these dead bodies, and then what was really clever is that in my video, I even noticed that when I was editing it, I see something moving in the distance, which looked like it was one of the werewolves eating the corpses. But then, just as your character's trying to look further into it, one of them just grabs your hand and just starts chewing the ever-living crap out of it, and that made me jump.
Yeah.
Because I was expecting the enemy ahead of me to just turn around and just roar at me, but no. His brother in the back just decided to jump in.
Apparently, they're much more, like, censorship-y in Japan, because, like, all the times that Ethan gets his, like, hands messed up by the monsters get, like, cut from the Japanese version of the game, apparently.
Yeah,
So
because
I've been told.
what's kind of confusing about that is because apparently Resident Evil games in Japan aren't allowed to have dismemberments.
Yeah, it's strange. Japan, it's one of those things where, like, in America, you know, we're fine with violence and death, but no sex. And then in Japan, they're like, sex everywhere, but no gore. That's not appropriate.
Yeah, like in Japan, like in a lot of their animes, they don't allow dismemberments. Like, when people think, you know, in the US they censored a lot of Dragon Ball stuff, no, that was also censored in Japan. It's just that when it was put onto streaming services and Adult Swim, they were allowed to be a bit more, like, you know, gory and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know why that just makes me
okay.
laugh, like, the scene which we're going to be talking about soon, when he gets his hand completely cut off by Lady Demetresque. Wonder what that must look like in the Japanese version. Is he just holding his hand that's okay and it's still spewing blood?
Yeah, literally.
Really?
No, like, what happens is, like, she cuts him, but it just sort of, like, knocks him back, and he goes, ow. Like, he doesn't actually, like, lose the hand. And then in the elevator scene, he just looks at his hand going, ow, it's, like, cut slightly. Ouchies. Like...
Man, I feel like that kind of ruins a lot of the body horror aspect of Resident Evil.
Plus, that's kind of like an important hint for reveal of the big plot twist of the game, that Ethan can just put his arm back on.
Which we will get to momentarily.
Yeah.
So, after you fight through the village and you get introduced to Santa Claus with a mallet and werewolves on horses that we never see again, which I was a bit disappointed by, so I thought they were going to be like sub-bosses. So,
yeah, some sort of unique enemy, like, you know.
Yeah, I'm not going to complain too much. There are still some variations of these lichens, as they're called. And my door is going. I do apologise if you can hear the buzzer in the background. Bit tired?
Yeah. Continue.
So yes, after you fight through the village, you get introduced to all the four lords of the village kingdom, sort of. It's confusing. They're called lords, yet they don't really run a kingdom. It's a village.
True. Kingdoms are usually a tiny bit bigger.
And so, I'm going to be real here. I feel like every single lord had something unique about them. Like, I'm not going to be one of those people that said, like, does a ranking system. I mean, there are obviously some that I prefer over the other one, but I feel like how they introduced each one was unique to the other.
Yeah, I think in principle, the extremely diverse and unique, you know, big bads was definitely one of the selling points for this game. Especially considering how much the Baker family was a big selling point of the previous game.
I guess this game kind of like, in a way, just thought it would continue that sort of trend with like Ethan just being thrown into a disfigured family. Let's be real, or dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Which
Which makes sense considering how many core concepts and themes carry over from the previous game.
And one thing I also liked about how each of the lords is represented is by the fact that kind of each one of them are inspired by old folklore or just old school horror stories. Lady Demetresque, obviously a Dracula-inspired villain. Angie,
Yeah.
a doll one. And I always pronounce his name wrong, I do apologise. Maru, who is a sea monster, kind of similar to like the Loch Ness Monster in a way. And,
Certainly.
or mermaids, because apparently in the original art there was meant to be like mermaid type enemies.
Oh, that's interesting.
In fact, Maru actually was going to have a unique, disturbing bit where on his back he was going to have the women that he loves like begging to die.
Oh, damn.
Yeah,
That would have been intense.
Yeah, that would have been really messed up. And then, of course, the unique one, which I thought was my favourite, Heisenberg, the more Frankenstein type of villain. As in, I don't mean like the Frankenstein, not the Frankenstein's monster, but the actual character himself, create weird life. Oh, life.
Yeah, because he's he's the one who is most intelligent and self-aware out of the bunch. He's not just a mentally twisted monster like all the others.
Yeah, like even though Lady Demetresque, who we're about to talk about, even though she seemed like to be like she was in her own control, when you do read her notes, she did kind of contain the same obsession that Angie the doll and Maru had for Mother Miranda. She wanted to be the favourite, of course.
Yeah.
Whereas Heisenberg, not as much.
Certainly. So yeah.
So let's move on to all the lords of the game, starting with Lady Demetresque. Actually, I feel like we should also kind of speak about the Duke, who was also introduced, because it was in her
The Duke is a very fun character.
Absolutely.
Very mysterious character. I think he is basically a better version of the Merchant from RE4, because both the Duke and the Merchant are very much not super sensical, in the sense that they're very much a game mechanic more so than they are in the game universe.
Yeah.
But Duke is way more integrated into the lore than the Merchant ever was. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I feel like the Merchant was entertaining when you saw him, but it just seems so out of the blue. He just has these contests set up for Leon, he has these bottle caps of characters from previous games as well as this game that you can unlock, and he just conveniently just opens his jacket and he just has any gun that he needs.
Yeah, and he never really had a personality or a character. He was just the shopkeep. He was a mechanic of the game more than he was an actual character.
I will say he was entertaining, with his laugh. And what's even funny is that the Duke actually references him by saying, just something an old friend of mine used to say. So that kind of goes into my theory, are the Duke and the Merchant part of an organisation that profits over the heroes, fighting Umbrella and stuff like that?
Could be. I mean, there's always people looking to profit off of conflict, and it makes sense that that'd be the case in the Resident Evil world. So
I guess so.
Whatever the case, the Duke is a very fun character. He's he starts off as being this Merchant replacement, but he ends up being your biggest bro by the end of the game. He's your only real friend in the game.
Yeah. And what's even funny is he's not. He seems like he's actually kind of humble in a way, because when you're in Lady Demetresque's castle and you go to tell him that you couldn't find your daughter, his joyful attitude kind of goes into a somber I'm sorry it didn't turn out that way for you. And he's even still like that until you reveal the vast. And he's like, well, Ethan, you've got your daughter right there. So, I mean, he's still kind of psychotic when he's saying it like that. It's like, dude, he's literally holding the head of his daughter.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's clear that the Duke is not a normal person, but he's still, a consistently helpful character, and it's always nice because like anytime you're playing a very grim, dark game like Resident Evil or Dark Souls or whatever, it's always nice to have like the one really nice NPC who's like supportive, just to have some bit of light in the darkness.
Yeah.
So,
I guess that's kind of what the inspiration was for this. Like, the moment you see the Duke, you feel safe. And what's even kind of unique about it is that when you go into, like, safe rooms and stuff like that, monsters still kind of chase you. But for some reason, they never go for the Duke. Even Lady Demetress, which makes me kind of wonder if, like, is he hiding, like, a true form? Like, he's obviously a BOW. Let's be real here. Like, he's not a normal person.
oh yeah. Yeah, like even just to explain how he gets to these different places to set up his shop requires that he be a BOW, because there's no way that he could fit through like I forget where it was, but there's a number of rooms that you go into and the Duke's inside, and it's like he's clearly too big to fit through the door, and yet he's there. So either he's a BOW or he's a fucking fantasy of Ethan's imagination. Like,
yeah, but it kind of makes me wonder if like the lords are too scared to confront him. Like, Lady Demetress will chase you everywhere in her castle, but sorry, there's a car alarm going on outside.
Yeah.
She'll chase you around everywhere in the castle except for the Duke's place. Now, obviously, it could just be seen as a gameplay mechanic, but I generally feel like the lords are scared of the Duke.
Yeah, I mean, I remember somewhere there was a video talking about that and pointing out that, like, if I recall correctly, like, a Duke ranks higher than a Lord. So it could be that he is literally, like, higher authority than the rest of them.
He does actually
And
have,
they
like, a
don't
symbol.
risk his... Yeah, suggesting that he's, like, potentially, like, his own separate noble house. Or something like that.
So, speaking of,
he's a cool character.
Yeah, I like him. Like, he's the comedic relief that isn't too in your face about it.
Certainly.
And let me just close my window quickly. That's slightly better. I feel like doing that whole Heisenberg bit where I go, "Shut your fucking hole." So, speaking of Heisenberg, let's talk about all the four lords in the order that you fight them in, shall we?
Sure.
So, Lady Demetress, let's be real here. If we're going to talk about Resident Evil 8, we kind of have to talk about her because she was kind of used as the advertisement for this game to, let's be real here, she was to attract the horny boys. Let's be real here.
Okay, let me rephrase that suggestion. She was meant to just be the standard first boss that you encounter. That's why they advertised her. And then the internet went full fetish mode. And, the people at Resident Evil 8 headquarters clearly were not prepared for this response.
I disagree with that. Okay, listen. The people behind Resident Evil know that sex sells. And in every Resident Evil game, that they always try and make their characters look as attractive as they can.
Yeah.
And in this case, they thought, let's make one of the bosses super attractive. I mean, look at even her attire, man. I'm playing my Let's Play on the channel right now, getting to the bit where she's chasing you, man. Look, they lift you up above her just to get a look at her cleavage. And there's even moments that they are clearly doing butt shots. It's like...
Okay, but, even if that was some factor in their decision-making, I still insist that they did not expect the sheer obsession that the internet proceeded to display with this woman.
I mean, maybe so. They probably knew people were going to find her attractive, just not on the amount of levels, stuff like that.
Yeah, she got memed to hell and back. It was ridiculous. Although, I will go out and say that broadly speaking, I would say Lady Demetress is my least favorite lord by a significant margin.
Well, it's kind of funny with me, is that I actually really liked her. Because when I got to the bit, which unfortunately I never recorded because my Elgato glitched out saying it was recording, but it actually was not, my reaction to it. And I guess we have to also talk about the daughters as well. Like, her section was really fun. It really brought me back to the mansion level of Resident Evil 1, as well as the tyrant sections of the Resident Evil 2 remake. And sure, there are zombies there, but they're very easily disposed of. But whenever the daughters or Lady Demetresque would appear, that was actually generally quite intimidating, because one of them is taller than you, and I thought she was going to be like in a way, the time where if you shoot him enough times in the head, he'll fall down, and you have enough time to quickly run around and do your puzzles. No, the moment you shoot her in the head, even with a magnum, she literally just tilts her head back and it's straight into her hat. It's like, oh wow, no, you're a lot tougher than the normal.
The thing is, I honestly found her to be rather ineffective across the board. Like, for example, both from a gameplay perspective and a design perspective, I really am just not a big fan. In terms of gameplay, fills the same role as Mr. X and the Nemesis, but is way less effective at it because she's a tall lady in a skimpy dress, like, wearing 30 layers of makeup. Why would I? She's not as scary as either of her predecessors.
I think it's more or less her presence the moment she's arrived. Like, she assumes, I don't know, it's a kink at this point, dominance. Like, nearly in all the rooms that she's in, like, for instance, when you're introduced to the Four Lords, she wants people to know that, you know what, she is the big dog. At least that's what she tries to give off. She's not intimidated by Heisenberg, even when he tried to intimidate her with his magnetic powers. And even when, like, Maru, she kind of just looked at him as just another pathetic life form.
Yeah, but, like, her being this haughty, aristocrat isn't intimidating. And I find Cruella de Vil more intimidating than Lady Demetress.
Well, I don't know. I've never seen. I saw the Cruella movie, and there was never at any point she turned her hand into Wolverine nails.
Well, you've never seen 101 Dalmatians, then, because she's way scarier in that movie. But point is, being an aristocrat she's an aristocrat in a big ass sun hat and a form-fitting dress, like, wearing a bunch of makeup. Like, why would I find that threat?
Okay, but what about the time of Resident Evil 2's remake? Like, he's a bald guy in a trench coat and a freaking whatever hat is called on his head. A bald cap.
Cool as fuck. Super spooky. Like, he's like this silent Terminator killing machine. That's so much more effective at being like, oh god, I'm in danger, than, hello, I'm the High Lady of Fashion here at Castle Demetress. Like, what? It's like, she's literally, if you took the tyrant, gave him 30 layers of makeup and a sun hat. Like, what? Why? Like, so in general, I find her very, like, not nearly as scary or threatening as the prior versions of this trope that they've done.
I don't know. I feel like she has her moment of being scary. Like, the moment she's, like, at least from my perspective, especially since, when I played it, the moment I see her, it's like an oh shit moment. I had to run away, even after I've just escaped her daughters. So I do kind of like, I get what you're saying, absolutely. Like, I don't think she's as scary as Nemesis was, especially because that man carried a bazooka and a flamethrower when he felt like it. But
because he was a monster, not a fucking fashion model.
But I do feel like Lady Demetress was kind of intimidating in her own way. 'Cause I don't think there's one way to be intimidating. There's ways you could be scary and intimidating with depending on your personality and, of course, your trope. Like, for instance, yeah, she doesn't look scary, by no means, but you can tell, like, before you stab her in her boob. I know that's not what Ethan did, but from my perspective, it really looked like he just jabbed her upside her boobs. She did kind of give off like an intimidating, unstoppable force, sort of like nature.
The problem is, like, with all, she doesn't really get a chance. Well, for one, she's in the game way less time than either Mr. X or Nemesis. So already she doesn't really get as much time to build up her "I'm a big scary monster" aura. Between fighting her daughters, solving puzzles, like exploring the manor, there's only a small portion of that where you're spent actively dealing with Lady Dimitrescu. So she doesn't really get enough time to really build her up as a spooky threat, whereas Mr. X is an omnipresent threat. And the Tyrant, at least in the original RE3, was also an omnipresent threat. Like, that's what made them cool, was that they were always hunting you. Whereas Lady Dimitrescu is more... The thing is, you brought up how, she's sexy, blah, blah, blah. That was, like, part of the design appeal. But I think she fails in both fronts, in that I think they made her too fashion model-y to be threatening, but they made her too monstrous to be attractive, in my opinion.
Well, especially when she has a bit of a makeover.
Before she has her transformation, I already thought, oh wow, look at this 8-foot-tall walking corpse. Like, she's so pale, she has monster eyes, and she wears so much makeup. It's like, it looks comical. Like,
she's meant to give off that vampire sort of look, though. Like, let's be real. If you're really going into this game not expecting her to turn into a monster, you've never played a Resident Evil game.
Sure, but like, and that's what they're going for, is the idea that, she's a monster trying to pretend to be this fashion model, like pretend to still retain some degree of beauty. But like, the end result is that she's too ugly to be beautiful, and too beautiful to be scary. And so it's like, she just falls into this kind of like, and you know what? I think she would have been so much more effective if she wasn't 20 feet tall. Like, I think that actually makes her feel cartoony. Like, it's like less, scary vampire lady, and more like the bearded lady from the circus. Like, she feels more like a freak than like an actual monster. Like, I find her daughters to be more effective, broadly speaking, at being like that whole trope of spooky evil vampire women from Dracula. Like, she just doesn't work for me. And so yeah, I really don't like Dimitrescu, because like, I don't find her, I'm not obsessed with her being this beautiful giant Amazon the way the rest of the internet is. And I also don't think she's scary. And once she transforms, I'm not really a big fan of her transformation either. I think it's a bit generic compared to all the other Resident Evil bosses in the series.
I actually, once again, surprisingly, I actually disagree with this. But I tell you, have you said your piece about Lady Dimitrescu?
Oh yes. Overall, not my favorite.
I guess I'll go. I do kind of agree with Jaru, but at the same time, I do think she's intimidating in her own right, and her transformation I actually love for multiple reasons. One, it's kind of a callback to the Dracula and him having a dragon sort of thing. I guess more of a gargoyle. There was plenty of stories where Dracula had a dragon, but this one kind of blended both, like, gargoyle and Dracula. You know, he would be riding on top of his, like, gargoyle. In this case, though, Lady Dimitrescu was the gargoyle.
They kind of went the Castlevania approach.
Yeah. And it was really cool, like, her boss fight was really fun for a first boss fight, like, the way she picks up Ethan and somehow he survives being thrown into a castle. Well, I mean, we know why now, but it was still funny that she tossed me like a ragdoll and Ethan just gets up and picks up his shotgun and is like, right, I'll fight you on top of this castle. Well, that's the thing that was
You
kind of...
what, mate?
Sorry, what were you going to say?
Sorry, I was making a joke. It's like he throws Ethan into a castle, and he's like, "You what? You want a piece of me? Oh, I'm like." He just gets up and is angry.
Yeah, that is true. That is funny. But do you know, that boss fight was good as well, because you're fighting her as you're like climbing up the castle as well, and then it ends like a typical knight fashion when you slay the dragon. You know, you finally take him down, and you fall down, and you know, while you stand there victorious, the dragon just dies. Like, that was pretty epic for a first boss fight, and I don't count the, you know, the werewolf with the giant hammer at the first start of the game as a boss, I don't even count the daughters as really of a boss. They were just more like sub-bosses, really, or even just stronger enemies. Don't get me wrong, they were entertaining, but wouldn't really count them as the first boss. I count Lady Dimitrescu as the proper first boss of the game.
Yeah, she's fine. She's a fine, like, almost tutorial boss.
So, next boss of the game, which to me, honestly, is my least favourite part. She was still cool, but not as cool as, like, Lady Dimitrescu and the next few bosses. That would be Donna and Angie the doll, which I did look it up. Apparently Donna is the human. Okay. There are some good parts about this level of the game. Like, the moment you walk into the house, no enemies are there, it's all clean, and it feels untouched. In fact, even when you're walking around, you get, like, these fake images of Mia. Like, I could already tell it's so unsettling because, well, we're led to believe that she's dead, which I thought she was.
Right.
And the graveyards and just the garden just looks so clean compared to like the rest of the village. The rest of the village is dark and dreary, there's blood everywhere, there's monsters everywhere. Even Lady Dimitrescu's castle, there's blood just everywhere in the basement. There's all the zombies. But this place just looks so clean. Until you go down and you find the next part of the daughter of Ethan, as well as the doll. And okay, first of all, the moment Ethan said, "Where are my guns?" I felt so scared. Like, because there's never been a point in Resident Evil where unless you play as a certain character, where your guns are taken away. Like, aside a few characters like Ashley and Sherry from Resident Evil 2's remake, you've always had some way of defending yourself. But not this time. And what's kind of funny with me is that I thought the mannequin of Mia was going to come alive and start chasing me. Well, I won't lie, that probably would have been scarier because I'm not a huge fan of mannequins and... but that's just it, I'm just not a fan of mannequins. Or dolls, yeah, I fucking hate dolls. Like, they are the creepiest things ever, especially some of them that move their eyes. Just no. Someone looked at that and was like, "Oh yeah, kids will love this." They were a madman. Just saying.
Lol.
And so the moment I'm walking down this hallway, and the body's gone, so I'm thinking the thing's alive, isn't it? What's funny, if you watched my video when you were going down the hallway, I only heard something moving in the darkness, and I immediately ran away. But when you look up a YouTube video, you're introduced to probably the most disgusting and the most uncomfortable monster in any Resident Evil game. The fetus, baby.
Yep.
Like, just, for one, it's so uncomfortable, especially when I had to hide behind it just so I can sneak out. Just the way it moved and the noise it made. And the fact is, this was actually a real baby recording. They actually recorded a baby crying for this. As well as playing. They actually got a baby in the studio to play with toys, to cry, just for this monster.
Horrifying.
I'm just picturing like 20 years time, they're like, "Oh look, Darren, that's you in the game." He's like, "Wait, I'm sorry, what?" And just exploring this place. This is obviously, no doubt, the scariest part of Resident Evil Village. Let's be real.
Oh yeah, easily.
Like the feeling of feeling defenseless, of course. And I think it was good that this was the second boss, because when you defeat Lady Demetresh, you feel like a badass. You're like, yeah, I can take on anything. And I think it was also at this point, wasn't the one where you take on the first proper werewolf, not just the humanoid ones? There was that one that bursts out of a house and you have to kill... No, wait, I think that was near the Marut section.
Yeah, the previous lycanthropes were more like wolf men than full-blown, like, monsters. Whereas the first proper werewolf is around that time.
Yeah, so you feel like an absolute boss, man. You've killed Lady Demetresh, you've killed her daughters, you've slaughtered an entire village of werewolves. What could the game throw at you? The game's like, we're taking away all your guns. It's like, oh, I'd realised that without my guns, I'm just a dude.
Yeah.
Just how, even though it's a baby, a giant baby, which is disgusting, but just the way it moved and sound, it was uncomfortable to listen to. And the fact as well, if you walk around the hallways where it actually goes, it leaves behind an umbilical cord, which is disgusting.
Yeah.
Just, okay, before we actually talk about the final section of the game, of this one, the boss, what did you think of this section? Because you didn't play it, you watched it, didn't you?
Yeah, no, yes, I watched gameplay from other people, so I can't really commentate on the quality of the actual, like, shooting and the gameplay mechanics.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, but as far as, like, the actual characters and stuff are concerned, and the horror elements, I think I loved the doll woman and her terrifying baby monster. I think that's easily, because, like, as someone who spent a huge amount of time watching horror game playthroughs and especially indie horror games, that was all too familiar. Like, that was some PT, like, oh my god, it's all in your head, nightmare fuel type stuff. Like, and it was crazy to see that sort of thing in a AAA horror title. Like, that was nuts.
With the much more higher budgets.
And I thought that was great. Like, that was easily the... Oh yeah, sure, definitely, 100%. I would easily say it's the scariest that a Resident Evil game has probably ever been, period. Because Resident Evil, like, for better or worse, Resident Evil's often been more action-y than scary. But, like...
It's had its creepy moments. Like, it has the creepy build-up, and it has the scares.
Yes. Yeah, it has its creepy moments and, like, some jump scares with a monster jumping out a window or stuff like that. But in terms of actual proper horror, this was easily, like, the first, or, like, one of the first major times that they really dove into it, and it was pretty fantastic.
I will say they're not as scary as the Hunters from the Resident Evil 3 remake. Just that whole hospital section, and the fact is, I'm terrified of Hunters. Just no. Like, those still shouldn't scare me.
I think Resident Evil 3 remake is a sin against God, so I disagree.
Sin against... You have to admit, the hospital bit was generally creepy.
I guess. But I would not say that it's even close to the baby. Fucking... You actually have to hide from it at, like, multiple points. Like,
that is true. Like, at least with the...
You can't just shoot it. Like,
at least
you can't just punch it in the face.
Yeah, I was just going to say, at least with the Hunters, you can give them a good old Carlos one hand.
Yeah, so I do think this is easily the scariest Resident Evil's ever managed to be. That said, is it... how do I compare this overall to Lady Demetresh? I like it more, generally. I don't really like Lady Demetresh, so, you know, kind of a low bar. Is Giant Baby and Doll Maker Woman my favorite lord? Hard to say.
Yeah, so I guess we should move on to quote unquote boss fight, shall we? Or is there anything more you want to add about the section?
Well, I have nothing but praise for the giant fetus section. I think it's a fun return to puzzle and horror that is at the heart of most pure horror titles. Because, like, with Resident Evil, they've moved so much more into action territory, especially in recent games, that it's easy to forget the horror roots. But taking away the weapons, forcing you to only your only defensive tools are your brain is really nice. I appreciate that.
Can you imagine if during the Game Awards this year that they nominate the baby actor for that section of the game?
Just crawls onto stage, like, oh my god!
Like the mother's just holding the baby, and the baby just goes that as it speaks.
It's like how there was like the first Oscar, I think it was Oscars, like the first time that they gave out the like award for animated films, like they did this whole gimmick where they had like Shrek and Jimmy Neutron like in the audience.
Oh, that is old school.
Like, imagine that, but with like the baby is like the baby has like a tie.
Oh, that'd be great. So,
anyway, so while I love the baby portion, then we get to the actual boss fight, and that's where it kind of
drops the ball.
Meh. Yeah, it's not amazing.
Like, okay, to be fair, it had a good build-up, because especially someone like me who's scared of dolls. So already you've got one of my worst fears in front of me. They don't really utilize it that much. Like, I was expecting they were going to be like, I was going to have my weapons back, and the dolls would just randomly attack me, and I had to figure out which one is going to attack me and which one's not. That generally would have been scary, because it's like, I'm walking through this whole house of dolls, which one's going to go for me and which one isn't. But, it didn't do that. Instead, you're playing hide and seek. And on a time limit, because if you didn't find Angie in time, some random spider doll would find you, stab you a few times, and then run away, and Angie doesn't move from her spot, apparently. So, I'd be amazed if someone has genuinely lost that section, because I don't believe you can. Like,
I've never seen anyone lose it, so...
Like, at least with Lady Demetress, I've seen people get killed by her because either they got themselves cornered or she managed to get a good few hits on them. I'm very curious to look up the video of what happens when the doll kills you, but I think this section kind of suffers from the level design because it's set in a single house, which would make sense because I don't think a doll maker would be in a giant castle like Demetress.
Yeah.
But because it's such a small area, because it's so easy to find the doll and just kill her, it kind of ruined the whole scary factor in that section. What was kind of cool though is the reveal. When you kill Angie, it turns out that was Donna, and the doll that she had next to her, she was just using her mind to control it and to mess with you.
Yeah, like the whole gimmick of Donna is that her only power is that she can mess with your head. Like, the dolls were never alive. The baby was never real. It was all just in your head.
That just makes me think, when you first meet the Lords, is there really nothing there that pushed Maru? Or are the other Lords as well fooled by the Angie doll?
Well, it's either...
Because I think she could control the doll.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Either well, it's possible that she's only really appearing to move the doll in your head, and in reality it was Donna herself who pushed Moreau.
Maybe.
I'm not sure. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know how much that's well thought out.
I think that's kind of the interest, like the kind of tragic thing about this boss is that she has an interest in the story, and you could try for ages trying to figure out what is real, what is her power. But unfortunately, I think she had less screen time than Lady Demetress, actually.
Actually, you know what? I just remembered that they mentioned that she put part of her parasite into that doll. So maybe she actually could control it.
Hmm. And then you end up selling that to the Duke, and who knows what he's going to do with that. I mean, we know what he's thinking about with Lady Dimitrescu's body. That waistline.
Oh, no comment.
Oh, God.
I don't think you can comment on a woman's waistline when it's bigger than your head. Anyway.
How did we not comment on that? That Ethan, while he was walking out the castle, was carrying this 8-foot lady just out with him.
Don't think about it. But yeah, no, I think the whole idea, and I mean, don't get me wrong, thematically, the doll maker never had any defense mechanism because she only has mental powers. So it makes sense that once you overcome the hallucinations, she herself wouldn't be that hard to deal with.
I mean,
but from a gameplay perspective, it's not exactly satisfying.
Yeah, like, obviously I wasn't expecting her to go full on. What's the name of that guy from Metal Gear Solid, the psychic guy, where you have to disconnect? Psycho Mantis. That's it. That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I wasn't expecting like a Kojima sort of mechanic where you would have to do something with your console just so you can beat him or beat her. But I was hoping to be more intimidated by her, you know, because the baby and Angie herself are creepy looking. Donna is not.
Yeah, I definitely think the final fight with her could have been a lot more memorable and a lot more interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And I was actually one of those people who thought maybe this is just due to maybe some things being cut out that couldn't make it into the game, but no, this was the original product. Like, Lady Dimitrescu was going to have a longer boss fight where she chases you through some bits of the castle, but they thought that was too much padding, so they had her to be a boss fight. But no, this section was barely touched. Like, they thought it was perfect. So...
Yeah, I guess the thing is, it's unfortunate because the whole issue and limitation with Resident Evil as a franchise is that it's very much meant to be this sort of grounded in reality, like physical stuff. Like, yeah, there's all these crazy superpowers, but it's all granted by like actual like biology, not magic. So having a villain whose whole gimmick is that they mess with your head gives you room to just do anything you want. You can have like, you know, PT style giant fetus monsters. You can have anything happen. And so for the final fight, I wish they'd gone a little bit more outlandish, a little bit more over the top for the doll maker, because it's like, you know, like have you fight a giant version of Angie, or like, you know, anything that just made it feel a little bit more spectacle than hide and seek.
So similar in the way of like Batman Arkham Knight, when you fight Scarecrow, even though what's happening is not actually there, he's just getting you with the fear gas, and you just have to maneuver around it and get a few lucky hits in.
Exactly. That's a perfect example of what I would have hoped for Angie.
So she's not a bad character by any means. Her story's interesting. In fact, what's even interesting, when you leave the house, the bit that looked all nice and pretty, just horrifying. Like, it looks dead, which was a nice touch.
Yeah.
It clearly went to show she's trying to create a paradise in her area, you know.
Yeah, and like part of her lore is that she's very mentally ill. Like, not even like the same way that like all RE villains are ill, but like has actual normal people with mental illness, and then tragic. Was given the parasite on top of that. So, you know, she's actually kind of a sad character when you read into her lore. But yeah, overall, like she never had friends. That's why she plays with dolls, because they're her only friends. Yeah, it's sad. So overall, though, I enjoyed it. I very much liked the baby portion, and while the boss fight at the end wasn't the best, I think overall it was a highlight of the game.
This section's gonna be more memorable than Lady Dimitrescu's section, like no doubt,
easily, definitely.
And honestly, I don't have much to add to that. Like, I generally think the same. The baby section was scary. Well, I still say though, compared to the hunters and the hospital section, not as like uncomfortable, nerve-wracking, but you know, it still is up there as one of the most memorable, scary moments.
It's a slow burn, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it works really well.
The boss fight, not as great. I didn't hate it, but at the same time, not, oh my goodness, it was amazing, sort of thing. But luckily though, from here on out, I felt like the boss fight started getting good. Starting off with Salvatore Maru. Now, I have to be honest, I thought this guy was going to be like a joke boss fight. You know, like in in Spider-Man 2 when you fight Mysterio, he has like 3 bars of health and you just knock him out with 1 punch. I thought he was going to be that. Like, you know, I thought the Lycans were going to be like the main enemies and you kill them and then you go to fight him and he's trying to like intimidate you, just shoot him once and he just dies. Like, I thought it was going to be like that.
That would be hilarious. That would be so funny.
But, and even his introduction, when you first meet him as the Lord, he's crying that he got pushed, and then when you meet him, he's crying about Miranda, then even Ethan's just like, I'll take this. Like, he's not scared.
That's a funny moment.
Like, it's the bit where Maru and Ethan just look at each other. It's just like awkward silence, and he just goes, "See ya." That is such a British humour joke.
Yeah, that was very funny. I quite like that.
But then he's suddenly laughing, and he's like, "Oh, you talk too much." And he starts closing the room with like acid poles. I was like, "Oh, never mind." And
right.
you get into a boat, and suddenly there's a sea monster here. Which, funny enough, the Duke kind of, well, not even kind of, he foreshadowed that Maru, well, even though I don't think he knows Maru's main transformation, but the way he says like he's not the only monster that lives in those lakes, it's like,
yeah,
that was good. And I also felt like, oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say it's kind of like a good like subversion of expectations, because you expect Moreau to not be the swimming thing, but then it's like, oh wait. It's an interesting twist.
Yeah, and I've seen
especially considering like in the original, or not the original, in RE4, the monster in the lake was totally its own small mini boss. It wasn't like a big, villain of the game. So it was a fun subversion of expectations in that regard.
Yeah, and do you know what? The section here was the most fun out of like the other section. I mean, don't get me wrong, they were fun in their own way, but this one was like really cool because one, you run into Chris again, and suddenly you see this proper monster just take you down, and you're seeing this whole flooded village and just this creature just in the background. Now, granted, I don't know why he doesn't just jump up and eat Ethan, and he only waits until you're on these very small little bridges. Obviously, game mechanics.
Sure.
But it was really cool that, you know what, this wasn't a boss that he will just appear and you just shoot him and then you go back. No, you had to just time and watch where he's swimming before you just decide to dash out onto the little bridge to get to safety. That was a nice little it made you think, like, is it now the right time? And there'll be moments he'll dive into the water and you'd have to really think, like, maybe he's going to appear the moment I touch the bridge, and you had to kind of like lure him out by stepping on the bridge and jumping out just for him to jump out. You know, and he was actually a really cool boss. But here's the thing I find annoying, and this is mostly due to the fans. People said Maru's the most sympathetic. Frick no. He is probably the most vile out of all the lords. I mean, granted, Heisenberg, you know, converts people into robots, but that's until we get to him. If you read some of his diaries, before he became this monster, he always experimented on people. He's one of the reasons Lycans are about. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's a case where it's like he's so pitiful, he's so pathetic, like that he's so incompetent, and he just wants to please Miranda, but he's so bad at it that he fails constantly. Like, that's the element that makes him kind of sympathetic. But I do agree that none of these characters are good guys.
Like, okay, listen, Thanos from Marvel Cinematic Universe, like, you can understand where he's at. He's not entirely evil, it's just what he goes about doing it. But these guys are selfish people. They want power. They want to be the dominant one. They want to be the favorite. Well, except Heisenberg.
They're madmen. They're nuts. They're
Yeah.
completely bonkers.
They're not trying to like cure cancer or anything like that. They're not trying to save the world. They're not becoming the next Power Rangers. They're just they're monsters. They're horrible people with superpowers. Even Heisenberg, when he was trying to say let's team up, it's like you want to take over the world with your army. You're not doing this for good reason. I mean, granted.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And Moreau's just one of those cases where people see him so pathetic and they're just like, oh, I feel sorry for him. It's like, no, I'm glad he's dead. He's a horrible person.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as Moreau goes, like, as a character, I thought he was funny. I think he was, like, definitely the comedic relief of the Lords in terms of his role. Like, if Lady Dimitrescu was, like, the tyrant slash, sex appeal. And and Angie was like the spooky, creepy, uncanny valley nightmare monster, while like they all have their roles, and Moreau's is definitely more comedic. And I think he's fun. I think he's entertaining. I like him more than Lady Dimitrescu, but like that's not saying much.
His boss section was pretty fun though.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like I feel like a big chunk of Moreau is very gameplay oriented, like navigating these bridges, activating these machines, fighting his fight. So it's hard for me to judge him fairly since I didn't play it myself.
You mean those magic bridges that launched me halfway across the village?
Yeah, very incredible technology. Really.
Sean, put that clip on here so people can understand what I'm talking about. That glitch aside though, what I really loved about this section is that when it comes to most giant monster horror game gameplay, they usually suck you out of it and just have the game just show the monster just throwing you about and destroying stuff, while really he's not a threat to you. It's just he's destroying stuff. That's scary. Brr. But in this case though, because it was in the gameplay, and that's what I was like aside the Chris section, every section of the game with Ethan is from his perspective. There's never a point that it shows a cutscene and stuff like that. It's just you're seeing everything through Ethan's eyes, which I liked. It was kind of like what they did with the new God of War, where everything is just behind Kratos.
Yeah.
So actually being able to be there to see this giant sea monster swim around, knocking over buildings, stalking you was really fun and not scary, but similar to Dimitrescu, intimidating in its own way, because you don't know where he is. He's under the water. You have to get to the other side of this sunken village just so you can drain the water.
Yeah.
And his boss fight, when you actually start to fight him, was actually still pretty good, because even though he's a sea monster, that doesn't mean he's useless outside of water.
True.
And I don't know, what did you think of like his whole boss section when you actually got to fight him?
Purely from an outsider's perspective of just like watching the fight, I thought it was fine. I think he looks like his design is cool. I think he has some unique attacks, like when he makes it rain acid. I think that's pretty neat.
Oh yeah, have you seen the death for that? That looks so graphic. Like you actually see the burnt marks on Ethan's hands, and he screams so loudly. Not just his typical death scream that he does every time he's low on health. No, he generally sounded like he was in pain when he was being burnt alive.
Nice. Yeah, overall I think it seems like a very solid standard Resident Evil boss fight. Shoot it a bunch, blow it up with some convenient red barrels.
It's very weird that this village that was flooded still has like oil tanks just strewn about that haven't been punctured over the years.
Yeah. Side note, I think it's so funny that like early in the game there's like these bags of flour that you can cut to get like a smoke screen, and then they like barely show up in the entire game.
Do you know? I remember when you told me that in the messages.
What was the point of that mechanic? Like,
Do you know what? I did see those bags around a lot, and I was just thinking to myself, why is there loads of flour everywhere? Is there like a cooking mama with the werewolves? Like when they're finished, they're like, "Hey guys, welcome back to Cooking with Lycans."
Welcome back to Hell's Kitchen. Literally.
Today's dish, we got the tyrant's arm, Lady Dimitrescu's thighs, and a baby. Enjoy. They just dunk a bunch of flour on it. It's like done.
Amazing.
I mean, there is that secret boss, the butcher guy. So maybe he has the cooking show.
Sure, maybe so.
We're not going to talk about him because he's one of the secret bosses, and he's not important.
Yeah.
Anything else to add for Fishman?
Fishman's fun. I think he is like the most, like, if I was giving him a letter grade, he'd be like a solid B, like maybe a B plus if I was being nice. And it's like he's serviceable, he's entertaining, he's Resident Evil, pretty standard.
I don't know why, but because you saying like the whole letter graded, I'm just picturing you sat on the desk just handing out like paper essays to like all the bosses of Resident Evil. Nemesis, you did all right, but you're a C plus.
Lady Dimitrescu, either be scary or be sexy. Don't suck at both. C minus. Here you go.
Oh god, we need to do a spin-off of that.
A plus. Angie, A minus. Very scary. Boss fight could use some work.
At some point, we should do like what was it that those people do at Warp Productions where they do like those skits where they try and suggest a movie? We should do something similar with you, like you're grading each horror monster.
I mean, I'm sure I have opinions on all of them, or I can invent opinions on the fly and then pretend I've always had them. It's one of my specialties. But yeah, no. Overall, Moreau's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. I think. Sorry, did you have
other thoughts?
I will admit his section was a bit more interesting. That we kind of got more of an idea how the Lycans sort of came to be, how it. I originally thought it was multiple viruses that were stolen from Umbrella, and they tested them out on all sorts of different people to create their own little society. But no, the fact we learned that each of the Lycans just turned out to be just different effects on people, similar to like how the T virus, some effects they become zombies, some of them become the tyrants, and with some other modifications they become the lickers somehow. I'd love to see the process of how that works.
Yeah, don't ask me.
Because I always thought the lickers were like humanoid creatures or animalistic creatures that became zombified, but it turns out no, they were once human. So it's like, okay, but why though?
Yeah, it's Umbrella made so many different like BOW experiments that it's hard to tell which ones are just T-virus, which ones are just zombies, or which ones had special stuff. I mean, I'm sure there's lore on it, but it's hard to tell at a glance.
Yeah, so I did like the fact the Lycans were just different variations, and Maru was just one of those very unfortunate people that... I think this also has something to do with the areas they're from, and of course their mental state, like you mentioned with Donna or Angie. I'm pretty sure the human's called Donna, I might be getting it wrong.
Yeah,
but she, of course, was mentally ill, so of course the virus had a different effect on her. Lady Dimitrescu was somewhat becoming like animalistic, but she still retained like somewhat of a different effect of it. But apparently she regularly has to have human blood, hence the whole vampire gimmick, because otherwise she will become one of those Lycans, probably one of those bigger ones.
Yeah.
And in this case, Maru, I think because he was in a fishy area, because apparently this is where mainly he's resided, even before the whole outbreak. So I feel like it had something to do with his environment that made him become this unfortunate case of a fungus fish.
Yeah.
It was still a cool boss fight, and I did kind of like the fact it completely killed my expectations, thinking, oh, he's just going to be a joke boss fight, to be like, oh no, he actually has major control, like, you're in his environment, like, he's in control. So,
Indeed.
props to him for, shocking me. And yeah, nothing else to say really. Maru was a fun boss fight. But of course,
Yeah,
now we're good.
Very solid.
Now we're going to talk about, let's be real here, the GOAT of the Lords.